A book that you wrote, it's called To Move the World, one of the many books that you've written. This one is called To Move the World, JFK's Quest for Peace. And I want to know what the takeaways from that book were, how it applies to the world today, and especially how it applies to the proxy war in Ukraine.
Well, yeah, thanks for asking about that. Especially, it's a book about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The world came within a hair's breadth of nuclear war, really closer than we can even imagine. And after we avoided global self-destruction, both President John F. Kennedy and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev realized this is insane. We have to pull back. And so in 1963, Kennedy made a kind of campaign for peace. And he gave a speech in June 1963 that is known to historians as his peace speech. People can find it online. And it's just beautiful. And so I wrote a book about it because I thought it was the best speech I know of by an American president. And he says, look, peace, talking about peace is not as exciting as talking about war, but we need to talk about peace. And the whole point of the speech, which is incredible, is he says, to make peace, Americans have to change their attitudes, not just blame the other side, but peace will depend on American attitudes. And Kennedy tells the American people, the other side is human beings. They want peace too. It's possible to reach mutual agreements, and we should respect the other side and find a way to live together with the Soviet Union. And Khrushchev heard the speech, actually immediately summoned the U.S. envoy in Moscow and said to Averell Harriman, that is the finest speech by an American president since Franklin Roosevelt. I want to make peace with that man. And a few weeks afterwards, they signed the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which is historically incredibly important. So I fell in love with the idea that, you can actually reason your way to peace and that we need to do it. The more I've lived and learned and studied also the Cuban Missile Crisis, the more terrifying it is because it nearly spun completely out of control. The moment that was closest to nuclear war was an event that was outside of the control of both leaders of the U.S. and the Soviet Union. It was a disabled submarine that thought it was under fire and was about to launch a nuclear-tipped torpedo. And we would have gone to nuclear war over that. And the order of the captain of the submarine was countermanded by a Soviet Communist Party official who said, I don't think this is a good idea, and stopped the firing of the torpedo. And it saved the world, actually. And so when I look at this horrible war in Ukraine, and I know the situation in Russia and Ukraine quite well because I was advisor to Mikhail Gorbachev. I was advisor to Boris Yeltsin. I was advisor to Ukraine's president, Leonid Kuchma. I've been around both countries for a long time, and I've been around Washington for a long time. And I know that this
So sorry about that.
Yeah, it's true. I know that this war could have been avoided, should have been avoided. Biden could have avoided the war. There were red lines of the other side that we kept crossing deliberately. And you don't do that with a nuclear superpower. It's not a matter of being blackmailed. It's a matter of common sense that you give a little space on each side so that you don't get into a confrontation.